I didn't lose as many of you guys as I expected. I lost my bet with Andrew. I thought I was for sure done because now you're going to I'm going to reveal an area that I think I'm going to treat, like I said to you, I'm going to treat this mixed area as it's truly an art, and I'm trying to reduce it down to a little bit of a formula that I followed in the past and going through that. Take it or leave it. Frankly, I think that an investor presentation, it's an art form. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is, especially for your initial presentation, is just engage your audience, wake up the bear, get them to engage with you, knowing that this is the first step in an overall process. How you go about that is really on you, and you go through that. For me, it was helpful to adopt sort of a framework that I used to build out my presentations and doing it, and going through that, I leveraged the Seattle Angel Alliance pitch clinic model that I went through and going through that. It's worked for me in the past. Feel free to use it, not use it. I think the elements that I'm going to talk through on this one sort of flow through to any investor presentation. Some aren't going to be applicable for yours and go around doing it. It doesn't matter. If you have a good investor presentation, if you go to the next stage with an investor and going through it. Before we start with it, notwithstanding my failure to have enough pictures in my term sheet presentation and over reliance on words and slides, 10 to 15 slides, rely on visuals, rely on stories. It's a movie trailer. Get your business idea across to them and going through that, and realize that almost as much as anything, you're selling yourself. I think especially for early stage companies, investors are looking at two primary factors: your market and the team. And it sort of reflects, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the concept of the lean startup. Eric Rees, if not, it's probably the single best book I can recommend for entrepreneurs going through it. And the whole idea on this one, it sort of follows, if any of you guys are in the software world, this whole idea of agile methodology for software development and the idea of quick cycles and sort of going through that, getting feedback and going quickly on these things. I found that investors sort of take a similar approach for early stage companies, that if you give me the right team in the right market, even if their idea is off a little bit, they're going to adjust and figure it out and go through that. And I think more than anything, that's the real key, is your team and the market you're going through that. Kind of going through the different things. I break this into 4 different acts on this. So the first act here for me is really what I call it's the teaser on this one. Ideally, it's about 3 minutes on it, and frankly, I think this is where you win or lose your investors. You need to be able to clearly articulate, in 1 or 2 sentences, what your company does, what's the problem you're solving, and how do you do it. And that's sort of, if you can't do that, then I think you're going to struggle with the rest of your presentation going through that. And this is where, investors do it, realizing that investors, these institutional investors, the deal flow is such, especially now, they're inundated with ideas and companies and going through that. I hear presentations all the time. You want to grab them, and you do that. So I don't know if anyone's willing to do for their company, anyone want to give it a shot? Guy was doing one for me earlier today. Guy, what was your company statement?
Mine personally?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I wasn't even thinking of these terms.
And he said, that's what I thought. So that's a good purpose statement. Partnering with clients to
basically help them keep perspective.
Yeah, there you go. The next IT, it's a natural language processing company that builds out intelligent virtual assistants for web self-service. We're the Siri for business, is sort of what I said on that one, and sort of kind of holistically capture them. I find there's different theories on this one, but I kind of always like the idea of having them engage in them. What does that necessarily mean? What do you mean you're going to change the way humans and computers interact? Kind of going through that. There's different things on that one. And when you describe the customer's burning pain point, I think that it's something that there's always sort of this natural inclination to want to get really technical. Realize that for the most part, your investor group's not going to be. They're not going to know. They're not going to know the intricacies of the whatever it is that you're doing usually. Sometimes they will. But it's really, I think it's most beneficial from my perspective to use use cases. Tell a story, walk through a pain point, make it relatable to them so that they can understand. Yeah, I've had that issue that in a world of increasing complexity with smartphones and all that, I need to be able to. I need my computer to be able to understand me, and I need to be able to talk to my computer and be able to go through that and doing it. And I get that problem. I get customer engagement. I understand the sort of drop-off rate and go through that. But make the problem relatable. Define it, make it relatable, and then obviously you got to explain how your company goes through it. So these for me are your really your first 3 minutes of your presentation, and it's sort of your act one. I think that sort of the investors that I talk to and work with, and I'm a part of a couple of angel groups in the area, and we sort of all think that at this stage we've sort of already decided if the answer is no. Then decided if it's yes.
First 3 minutes?
But we've decided if the answer is no at this stage. So then you go from here. So then the next side. So, okay, we've identified what the company does, what the problem is, how we solve it. Now I want to know the magnitude of that. And going back and sort of kind of, like I said previously, is at this point in time, I may haven't said no at this point in time, but if you're solving a problem that's a real problem, but there's not a market for it, I don't care. And so you need to sort of understand the market you're going after, what that sort of total opportunity size looks like. It can be a top-down, bottoms-up. It can be any way you want to do it. I think investors have a level of forgiveness around this stuff that you don't always necessarily expect on it. I mean, they get that you're swagging this thing, and sometimes you don't always know it's imperfect. A lot of times these are emerging industries that it's not that clear. You have to draw on sort of ancillary markets and all that, but it's okay. But try to go through the process of identifying the market size. I think you always have to explain how you're going to make money. What's your go-to-market strategy? Are you a direct-to-consumer model? Are you a software company on a subscription basis? Is this a professional services model? Are you never going to sell the product? You're just developing a technology asset that you're going to sell. But how are you going to make money? And you have to go through that. And then as part of that, competition. I think, one of the, I've had the kind of one of the things I enjoy most is I'm a judge for a couple of investment capital competitions, and so the folks will come in, and you'll go and you'll listen to the pitches and you'll walk through it, and a shocking number of them say, we don't have any competition. Well, then you don't have a market, and so doing that, and if there's not a direct competitor that's doing exactly what you're doing, I think that's fine. But everyone has competition, and frankly, if nothing else, your competition can be, I've bought this answer from folks before, your competition is the company doing nothing. That there's no one currently doing what you're doing, which is scary. They're solving the problem in a different way.
Or they're putting up with it.
What's that?
Or they're putting up with it.
Or putting up with it and doing that. So even if your competition is just simply, status quo and keeping on it, but be honest about competition. And I am always skeptical if you can't name competition. It makes you really question if there's a market size. I didn't ask any questions on the first one or second one. Any questions, comments, thoughts, disagreements? This is an art. People do it wildly different on this kind of stuff. How many folks here have given an investor presentation before? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
Your investors are not just in money in different ways.
Yeah. You ever say that again?
They say investors are not just about money. Or saying it the other way, if you're pitching people to hire them or to become part of your launch team or to
absolutely
say something nice about you in the newspaper.
We're all on sales. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely right on it.
Question: how much important is a prototype for a pitch presentation? And can you start with a demo of the prototype?
Yeah, I mean, without question. I mean, I think having the sort of act 3 on this thing when you get to execution is that, one of the natural things, I'll just kind of go to that slide on it here. And so, the tractions on it is if you've got, you know, I'll use an example on this one. So the last month or two ago, I was this was actually a business plan competition. I was a judge at, and these guys came up and said, okay, we've got a mind-to-machine interface, and you know, we can put it to there, and it can go through that, and I can control without movement or doing anything on that one and everything else, and I'm just sitting there going, okay, that's fantastic. I'm going to select you guys as the winner of the business plan competition because your business is around the magic pill that makes me move 50 pounds. Okay, great. Then they came out with a prototype. They brought it out and they showed it to me. And believe it or not, very limited functionality, and they could do it. And then I was like, wow. Okay, so I think that a prototype, I think in large part, it was a little bit creepy, but really limited applications, but they were able to do it, and you know, and maybe I was just too stupid to realize you could do those things, but so I think that a prototype, especially when you're dealing with a truly cutting edge area that people aren't familiar with or they don't understand how you solve the problem, or if you can do it, having a prototype that demonstrates it is incredibly valuable. Do you have to have it? No. And what I would probably suggest to you doing is, you might even sort of tranche your capital raising needs so that you raise just enough money so that you can build out that prototype and then raise additional capital behind that, because your inflection point for your valuation of your company is going to be much higher once you have that prototype. Do you need to have the prototype to raise money? No. That help? Then that's all opinions. I mean, whatever. Take it for what it's worth. Yes, sir.
That's just a question. So the iPad, so that would have not happened unless it was incorporated. Corporations deep pockets, what you're saying. Because that was such a new concept and such an innovative new technology that, I mean, I think Microsoft tried something like that before, but just didn't get the kind of traction.
Yeah, no, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Is there?
I'm just saying, if you're trying to really create new markets, you're saying if you do competition, so if you want to test out ideas that are that expensive, you actually have that kind of.
Yeah, no, that's true, and I think on that example, the iPad, though, I mean, people were still having portable, electronic, portable, laptops. I mean, there was a market you were going after, and you were competing against for that one.
The way you interact with.
Completely different. Yeah.
Touching as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a different thing. But for that one, if we were going through your presentation, you'd probably draw some corollaries and draw on that and show and create believability around your market by that. But yeah, it's a great point. Absolutely right.
You said that you might want to go for limited funds until you got the prototype or the first production.
Yeah, it depends on
hardware.
Yeah, it depends on the company, what you're trying to do.
I guess what I'm wondering is how many people want to invest $1 million to get to point A when they know once you get to point A, you need $3 more million to get to point B, which will be profitable.
Yeah, it's I think more than you think. I mean, I think that, in that situation, if you knew for sure you'd need to get to $4 million and you're with an investor, you might go out to them and say, we're raising $4 million, we're going to tranche it. And the first $1 million is going to come in.
So you'd recommend being pretty clear.
You want to have
that you want to get it in increments.
You wouldn't that way. In this situation, what I'd actually argue is that you actually would want to find most companies I represent and investors I represent understand that there are going to be multiple capital raises. There's sort of an expectation that once you enter this arena that you're not going to scale this company to the way your projections show without additional capital coming into the company. You just don't need it right now. So I don't think that the future need for capital is that scary. I think where it becomes scary is when it's, and this is particularly problematic in the drug arena. where all of a sudden your cycle for your investment is so long, and that you can clear your first trials, but then to go through the next one, it's such a huge amount of funding that you're really limiting your pool of investors who are willing to sign up for that or take the risk that that additional funding is going to be there.
So all of that information should be in your financials.
Yeah, you want to talk, I mean, you know, and even before this, just sort of back to the whole idea on the term sheet, idea of understanding if you want to take on money, you need to know how much money you want, what you're going to do with it. And if you're raising capital for, you know, this, you know, for the prototype, and then you're going to need additional money after that, you want to identify that, my opinion.
And going back to the market size assessment from the previous slide, from an investor's perspective, how critical is that, and what level of detail would they want the person to have researched? You know.
Yeah. I think investors tend to be pretty forgiving on it. I just think they want to sort of be able to have a, you know, and again, I mean, this is one person's opinion on a lot of this stuff, all this stuff. I think that there's is you want to show that there is a market there, and the, you know, do you need to have the absolute detailed, dialed in idea on it? No, but do you need to sort of understand if you're a company that's developed a new, you know, technique for purifying water through a drop-in tablet, that the overall market size for water filtration systems is roughly X? Yes.
Probably a rough estimate.
And you go through that. It's sort of usually, I mean, I find that you can sort of come up with approximations on that and go through it. But I think people want to, ultimately they're going to want to understand the size of the market. It's hard to make an investment decision without it, in my opinion. But, you know, different folks have different opinions on it, obviously.
What are the key, you mentioned earlier that people would invest based on the people and the idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. What would you say are the key factors relative to the team?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what type of company it is. You know, typically when you're dealing with startups, it's around usually some product idea on that or going through that one, so it's technical expertise and ability to execute on it. Other times on it, if you're dealing with a company that's trying to create sort of a network effect or it's a sales or something like that one, then it'll be that skill set. But whatever skill set is most applicable for getting the company to the next phase, if it's technical, if it's sales, if it's additional capital raising, if it's access to the right people that are going to leverage, whatever those would be, whatever I identify as the most significant factors, I want to see that skill set in the management team, and I think going for it.
I've heard the passion is
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, if you absolutely. If you go up there and you're not passionate about your idea and you don't believe in it, I mean, everyone sees that. I mean, everyone's sat in the presentation and it's like, okay, this person's going through the motions and doing it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this stuff's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard.
Right. Kind of on that point, does it have to be the CEO? Can you go to the team with somebody who's better at pitch decks and send them in and the CEO might be there? But...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's personal on that one. You know, I think it's a, you know, having that intellectually honest conversation with the CEO and the team and sort of understanding those roles and going through it. You know, investors are going to ask questions. You know, that's not uncommon when your CEO is really sort of a product founder and is running the company. You know, it's you know, oftentimes, you know, you're probably going to have a conversation around what's the long-term role of that person, and are you going to be able to, how do you fit there and bridge it? But, I mean, the presentation, VP of Sales give the presentation to people. I think it's most effective. I think, you know, it's most effective when it's the CEO, but it can be anyone. Yes, sir.
Maybe just one of the things that a CEO at whatever size kind of has to do has to be a spokesperson.
Yeah.
Effectively, you know, separate from your internal stuff, but internally, but externally too. You have to have at least a tolerance for being the face of the company. There's not a real way of getting around that.
Yeah, I mean, I share that general opinion, but companies do it all the time. I mean, you know, there's certainly plenty of companies out there that raise capital with the CEO not as as the person in front of the larger audience.
But just you
But
gain effectiveness,
effectiveness, so-
when you have a card that says CEO, then they take you seriously if you can say something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's without question. I mean, the CEO, that's the head of your organization, and is one of that. I completely agree. Yeah.
Recently, I came across a TED Talk, which was discussing about, what are the major factors for a startup to be successful.
Yeah. So
the one single most factor out from the research, was timing. Timing when you launch your idea or product.
Yeah.
So, do you think that, will it help if you have a slide, explaining the timing of so maybe analyzing the current market trends and saying that this is the right time to launch this product?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, are you familiar with the book Crossing the Chasm by chance, and going through that, and this idea of technology fitting a certain time and place, and the dilemma of early adopters and your first followers, and sort of the technology innovation cycle and how it goes about it. And that, I mean, timing is absolutely crucial. And so, especially when you're dealing with, in your situation, I'm assuming this is a pretty novel product and idea. Part of your market conversation going through that is a discussion of where is the market ready for it?
Are you too soon?
Yeah, are you ready, or are you too soon on it? And you go through that. And I don't know how much you guys have gone through that, but sort of like the Gartner hype cycle and some of that type of information out there. It's kind of an interesting one. I've used it as a powerful tool in the past. It's kind of a little bit of a game of shells where you're trying to identify with get out of someone that's in the trough of disillusionment phase of the hype cycle, and trying to do it. But yeah, I mean, understanding where your technology fits in the adoption cycle, in that cycle, I think it's a very crucial, especially for truly cutting edge. If the market's not ready for it.
You can also predict how the technology is going to go in the next few years, and maybe make a timing decision on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about even taking funding from investors.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely right. And I think everything you're describing there, all that's doing on the team is you're just creating believability. I come out of that and say, okay, I understand this guy understands that that networks are increasing capacity at this level of scale. Here's how it's going to go out. Here are the repercussions for that, for this device that I'm bringing in that's going to inject it. Or here's the public records that are going to open up, and EHR systems are going to start communicating, and here's this going to fit. And being able to understand the different forces coming together and how you plan it, I think it creates a really compelling pitch.
Is majority of the Series A funding happens at the pre-revenue stage?
I mean, I think if you're going to stereotypically, yeah, I mean, or maybe there's some initial trial customers, but it doesn't have to be. I've got a client right now, believe it or not, that we're doing a $30 million raise on $100 million pre-money valuation in a Series A, and they've just bootstrapped this thing and done it, and now they're at a stage where they want to really try to accelerate growth to really try to get to the IPO. It's a network effect thing, but they've been growing 100% compounded annual growth rate and going crazy and doing all that, and their Series A round's $30 million on 100. So, but stereotypically, yeah.
What is the pipe, you say, as well as your pipeline?
Your sales, or who are you talking with? Who are your partners? Who's if it's a product or a service or whatever it is that you're selling or providing, for some companies, if it's a technology asset you're developing or you're not at that stage, it may not be applicable. But, if it's, where are you at in your sales cycle for delivering it if you're past the prototype stage?
As opposed to the, let's say, a product roadmap or something like that.
Yeah, but that would be, a product roadmap. I think you always have to be a little bit sensitive at this stage about giving out too detailed of a product roadmap. But, for the example of your prototype, if you came to me and we're going through that, I would want to know where you're at in your development cycle and what else needed to occur. But yeah, absolutely.
And as for the team, do the investors always look for, say, multiple founders, or do they usually prefer co-founders running the company rather than a solo founder?
I think what they want to see is an executive team that's invested and is passionate. You know, I don't think you need to be a founder to fit that role. Oftentimes it is, but I think that you know, there's plenty of companies out there that, you know, someone else really had the idea, founded the company, got it to a certain level, I grabbed onto it, and as an investor, if I think that the person currently running the business who's not the founder, my only question I'm going to ask is how into this are you? Or how invested are you, and how much are you passionate about doing that? But I don't think it has to be founders. I don't know. Any of these, I'm curious. I mean, I'm just giving opinions here, guys. So none of it's so disagreements, thoughts. Otherwise, they're all as valid as anything I say. That's for damn sure.
Do you have any tips for actually like pitching like your business without any slides, like just verbally? So that is how it starts, like
Yeah.
when you approach investors.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You mean having a presentation without any slides?
Yeah, just like maybe actually communicating all these points without actually having anything, any slides or any modern equipment.
I think that, you know, as evidenced by the amount of slides I had, I think that the fewer the slides and your ability, if you have the ability to give an effective presentation and carry a room and go through that and communicate effectively without slides, that's an incredibly powerful thing to do. I think it's difficult, but I think on the spectrum for things is you know, I always sort of kind of go through a, you know, candid assessment with, usually it's the CEO who's giving the presentation, about their comfort level as a presenter. And the you know, the more comfortable they are, the better they're able to carry the room. I encourage them to have fewer words, more pictures, and rely on talking. If they're less comfortable and not as certain of that kind of stuff, let's rely more on words and going through that. Realizing, just like I'm sure you guys were on the, that's hard when you kind of go through some of this stuff, but you know, when you've got words up there, the audience tends to read it. They're not listening. They read the slides.
And a picture's worth 1,000 words.
There you go. There, exactly. So
what about using like a whiteboard?
yeah.
I don't know how does that work.
Yeah. You know, one of the best, absolute best presentations I ever saw is the presenter gave a talk while the person behind him was doing the sketching.
Yeah.
It was spectacular. It was so captivating.
Nowadays, a lot of like marketing and business, at least in big corporations, they do that. Like, so it will be the manager, like product manager, talking about it, and someone else like sketching something.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah. It was spectacular. Yeah. Yeah. And
if you got time to rehearse that sort of thing.
Yeah. There's you still got a product to develop, a company to run, and everything else to do, but it's key. So, you know, we'll finish it up here with the, and then we go through that. The last thing on it, and this is the offer and the financials. I would consider those to be the two things that, you know, frankly, especially for a Series A round, I oftentimes wouldn't include financials, frankly, on it, and I'd go at the next level on that thing. You know, I think that everyone's so used to seeing this inflated hockey stick and going through it that it gets discounted to such a level, and that if you don't include it and go through it, I think you need to be prepared to have, you know, a follow-up conversation around your key operating metrics, your plan for profitability, and going through that. If you don't have it in your slide presentation, I think that's one of those that can easily get cut out on this one. And similarly, I go back and forth on this one too with the offer. Because I think it's important to talk about how much money you're trying to raise, but, you know, I would never go into too much detail on the offer, because frankly, it's just going to be a part of the discussion with your investors if you try to get, you know, the doing it. So the offer and the financials are the two things. It's, you know, kind of either way. I would say how much money you're trying to raise and rough on those pieces on it, but trying to get any more detail than that. And if you didn't include it, any investors who's interested will. If you've captured them up to that point, they'll ask you the question. You can go from there. And then on the Q&A, get prepared. It's you know.
It's so wonderful of the Shark Tank.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've all seen it. Mark Cuban's out there in every room. And you know, there's going to be people that just don't get your business model. don't think the market's ready for it, think you've missed the boat, think somebody else is already doing it, doesn't think that you're the person capable of taking it there. All that kind of thing, it's part of what you sign up for when you get in front of a room, and just don't take it personally. So with that, I will let you guys go. We'll have any questions and go through that. See if there's anything out there, and do that. So thank you guys for your time, and appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Just one quick question. So how does IT work? So does the investor, if they have multiple companies they're working with, can it take some of the, if they learn with one company and push those into
so any investor that's coming in, I mean, first of all, when you're picking your investor, you know, one of the things you do want to be aware of is whether they've got competing companies in their portfolio. From an ethical perspective, usually they're going to try to avoid it. From a contractual perspective, your investors are going to sign non-disclosure agreements, which include non-use provisions, which they can't use any of that stuff for the benefit of anyone else and going through that. You know, oftentimes it gets a little blurry on what's considered to be confidential information, all that kind of stuff. But you know, it's you know, there's circumstances out there where it's an issue. You know, what was it? eBay was a huge investor in Craigslist, and Craigslist has been suing eBay, and they finally just settled it because they say eBay stole their confidential information on how they build out their networks and doing some of their stuff, and that they stole it as an investor and what they gained as an investor in Craigslist. So I mean, it happens, you know, and it's something to be out there. When you take, you know, sort of related to that, you know, taking money from strategic companies, sort of company investments, which, you know, going through that, I mean, it's, you know, there are companies out there that are notorious for, you know, loving to come in and do a deep dive on someone's diligence, going through all that kind of stuff, and they're going to develop it themselves. I mean, and the problem is as a startup company, you know, frankly, you know, it's a hard battle to win. So it's easier to sort of have do an assessment up front of whether this is a good fit for you as a partner. If they're an investor that's got 3 competing portfolio companies, I'm going to suggest they're probably not. So that's it, guys. They'll stick around.